If you're looking to raise venture capital, this episode's for you. My next guest breaks down 5 green flags they look for from founders, 5 red flags they avoid, the top questions you should ask a VC, and what it's like investing side by side with celebrities, including Leonardo DiCaprio. Please welcome Nathaniel Harding. Nathaniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sean, for having me.
Thanks for jumping on. So before we dive in, why don't you tell us something about yourself that most people don't know?
Most people don't know that I was an official judge at the Miss Oklahoma beauty pageant. It was a week-long job. It was grueling, but somebody had to do it.
Yeah, and not a bad gig, my friend.
Yeah. It is actually my wife is a connection through my wife, so it's also sanctioned by the wife committee. You know, it's important.
It's approved. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good for you. That's a first on this podcast. All right. Well, let's dive into your backstory here. If you could take a few minutes and tell us about your career background.
Yeah. So I'm actually from Oklahoma originally. It's where I am now. I've been all over. I've been to 50 states and 40 countries. But my career after college, I worked for a large oil and gas company before working for our family's oil and gas business. I'm an engineer by degree and by career. And then we brought in outside capital and grew the family business and sold it now almost 10 years ago, which started my journey as an entrepreneur. So since 2014, I've started my own technology-driven oil and gas exploration company. So, we would work with geoscientists and technical equipment to find new areas to develop. And that was really, defined my career 2014 to 2020, but also around that time, or kind of in the earlier part of that, I was in the Air Force. I was a reservist in the Air Force, working with geospatial intelligence and logistics. And specifically in 2012, I was in Afghanistan working at the U.S. NATO headquarters. So that was a tremendous experience. Got to work with other military officers from our allies, as well as our Afghan allies that were there with us. And anyways, came back home, returning to civilian life, and was an entrepreneur, starting and selling technology-driven oil and gas companies. And then I also have been appointed by the mayor of Oklahoma City and the governor of Oklahoma to serve in different roles relating to workforce and economic development. So specifically, Oklahoma City had a nearly $1 billion 10-year project that built out different quality of life and infrastructure assets. And so I was appointed to help oversee those projects. And then starting in 2018 was personally an angel investor, investing in high-tech companies. And those experiences all kind of came together when my partners and I started Cortado Ventures, which is our venture capital firm investing in high-tech startups focused in the middle of the U.S.
Got it. And this was started around 2018, 19, somewhere in there?
We officially launched in 2020. It was kind of an idea in 2018, and then we launched in 2020, like a month into COVID. So that was my COVID project, I guess.
Right on.
Yeah,
they're the same on my end too. Launched TYKR, and that was July 2020. The smack dab of COVID. Yeah. So let's dive into your firm a little bit here. Talk about the types of businesses you invest in a little bit.
Yeah. So high-tech startups broadly, but specifically companies that where an entrepreneur has built their product, whether it be software or something physical, but some novel new invention that has application in different industries that we call critical infrastructure. So that could be energy, logistics, mobility, supply chain, advanced manufacturing, as well as healthcare, biotech, and medical devices. So, and these are companies where it's maybe pre-revenue or very early revenue, early commercialization. And we invest at that seed stage and help the companies go from that first commercialization to a thriving, growing company. And we invest in several companies throughout our fund. So we'll raise a fund every few years and then invest in these high-tech startups that fall within our categories of sectors. And then lastly, we focus in a region that we call the mid-continent. So really stretching from Houston to St. Louis to Denver, we see a lot of commonalities in those sectors. It's also where we leverage our network to really help these companies grow.
Got it. Okay. You gave us a lot there. A lot of the questions I was going to ask, you just answered, like what size fund are you going for? So it's seed round. What kind of checks are you writing typically?
as far as size, anywhere from 250,000 to 2.5 million.
Okay.
And depending on the round dynamics, we're often the lead investor or co-lead or what we call a catalyst. And so we may, the terms may be, founder set, but we'll actually work alongside and help raise the round. And so we'll invest alongside other investors, minority investors, but, very much still a founder-led company. But yeah, in terms of check size, our average first check is about $1 million.
Okay. Let's get into some what I would call green flags and red flags. What are you looking for? And then what are some red flags, some signs you probably want to avoid? So let's get into the good first. What are you looking for with the companies you invest in, especially knowing that you're investing in pre-revenue? You're taking a little bit of a risk there, which means I'd like to know, what are you looking for? What stands out?
Yeah, it's definitely based around the founder, right? Because and that founder's insight. So importantly, so green flags for us would be, what is it about their background and experience that gives them this unique insight? It didn't have to be technical talent. Certainly that could help if they're building something that that is very technical, but an ability for them to really be a leader. And so, because think about it, when you're a startup founder, you need to recruit talent around an idea. You need to recruit, first customers, be able to raise capital. And so there is a certain level of those leadership qualities that we look for. So green flags would certainly be an ability to communicate and articulate your vision, having a unique insight that's informed by your background. And so that may be industry experience. So coming from the same industry where you're now building innovative product, that's a green flag. And I would also say, people that have illustrated a certain amount of creativity and grit and tenacity, because startups and building companies is not for the faint of heart. And there will be bumps in the road. There will be pivots that founders have to make. And so another green flag is an ability to be a creative problem solver and to really be a driver. Sometimes I even refer to it as a people mover, because at the end of the day, you need to convince people to move in a certain direction. And that can be done through various personality traits, but just really a demonstrated ability to move people, towards a vision. Again, these are all things that may be not immediately apparent, but that you're able to, learn about each other as through the course of getting to know a founder.
So to kind of quantify it a little bit, do you start asking questions like, tell us about previous projects that you executed at this stage where it's pre-revenue? How did you get there to like a revenue situation? You have them walk through that journey to see some of these green flags kind of bubble up to the surface?
Yeah, so the one that could be apparent would be their industry background, right? So they come from the same industry that they're now building for. But then, really the three key questions are, why this, why you, why now? Why is this new technology inevitable and needed? Why are you the one uniquely positioned to bring it into the world? And why now? Like, is the market in a place where there is a viable go-to-market strategy? And so when those things come together and the ability to walk through that, articulate that, we may not ask the question in quite that way, but those are really the things. Like every good pitch is going to be able to answer those questions.
Right. I've seen those. Who you're pitching to will have some kind of framework, like you described there, the three questions: why this, why you, why now, and versions of it. So yeah, that makes sense. All right, flip the table here. Red flags. What jumps out at you? Like, we probably don't want to invest in this company.
I would say, lack of honesty. So, obfuscation, somebody who is really not communicative, or, because there's a huge trust factor when you're building a company early on, and really in business in general, but there's so much that isn't clear. Really just owning up to good news and bad news. Those are important attributes for character, and to know that it's going to be a long road together. So we need to be able to trust each other. So yeah, red flag would be not communicating or evading, what could be like bad news. I mean, another red flag, which is less about character and more about just alignment with what it's going to take to be a successful startup founder, is, whenever we see kind of like a pre-revenue, like pre-seed seed company that is just really, frankly, like bloated in terms of like their org chart and their, like if I get an email from like a idea stage company with emails from like their chief of staff, I'm like, well, I mean, that you have maybe not a clear idea of like what it's really going to take to bring this idea into the world,
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
that like, well, I'll just hire business development from like day zero. It's like, no, as the founding CEO, you're going to be the one that's just on a mission to land those first customers, those first, we do enterprise tech. And so I usually say the first 10 customers are all like founder led, and you got to make those first customers wildly happy.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're trying to outsource that, bad expectations.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I've seen that quite a bit where you'll see a pre-rev tech company with a whole bunch of motivated 27-year-olds that they've got 7 people in the business. 2 of them are founders, and the rest are like, are you working for free, or what are you? Are we playing business here, or are we doing business?
Yeah. Everybody is like really part-time, and I get it. When you're first building something, it may be a side hustle, but 10 people giving 10% of their time is not equivalent to one person giving 100%.
Correct. Yes. Well phrased. Yeah. No, good red flags there. You don't have to give any business names, but we always like to hear like what's a big win in the last 4 years, and maybe a big loser, and you could share some lessons learned there. Let's start with the negative side first. Were there any duds or strikeouts you had in the last 4 years?
Yeah, certainly as a VC, you definitely have lots of zeros. I mean, I saw a study recently that you're even like the top decile funds will still ultimately have half their portfolio go to not return at least their investment. But for us, we had a company that really had a complex business model. That's one of the things that we learned. If there's many different players for a product market fit to happen, then that can be like, you really have to understand like the risk behind that, because you're not just trying to convince like one customer in one sector. You're trying to move, maybe both sides of a marketplace at the same time. Or if the customer who's getting the benefit is not the same entity that's paying for it, that's another situation where you have misalignment. So we've seen to not give the name, but to kind of give a little bit more color around it, had a company that was really interesting and had a novel solution in the job tech space, and so connecting people with work. And there was a celebrity investor that joined the round, like super exciting, like we got to jump on this. I mean, big name, and it's going places. But that's also when we learned there's the same company where it was a complex model, and complex models, I now believe require more runway because there's more to pieces that you have to fit together, so you need more time. But I also learned that working with billionaires is not always awesome, because when they're like really motivated and interested, then like it's amazing and everything's moving so quickly and it's exciting. But then if they just like get bored with that project, then all of a sudden it's dead to them, right? And like they don't have any needs. They don't like need. They're not a fiduciary for other people's money. They're not trying to still make it. It's my my own thought process on it, but like that it can be very binary in terms of kind of the attention you get. So it's not always great to have like a celebrity investor involved.
That's funny you say that, because I've run into other people with that same situation, that they'll have a celebrity they're motivated for like quote unquote 5 minutes, and they don't need the business to be successful because they've made money in other ways. So if things start getting a little difficult, or there's a little bit of friction, their attention goes somewhere else in like 2 seconds flat, and the entrepreneurs are left hanging. I've heard this story on repeat. So yeah, listeners out there, it might be exciting for a minute if a celebrity is getting involved, but based on the success ratio, I'd say it's like 95-5 rule. I'm not going 80-20 here. 95% of the time, it's not going to work out like you expected.
Yeah, and you should always have most of your cap table be professional financial investors, right?
Yeah.
So the Cortados of the world, like it's literally our job, and we're driven by many layers of motivation to make it work, and it is our full attention. So I maybe you could even say like it's good to have a mix. It's great to have a strategic investor. It's great to have like a big name or celebrity investor, but having financial investors and having that mix, so that way when things aren't going well, you have people that can roll up their sleeves and help get through it.
Yeah, good call. You want the real entrepreneurs. They're in it. They've got skin in the game, and they want this to survive. Grit was a key word at the end, or a few minutes back, that really jumped out to me. Let's flip the equation here. You talked about a loser. Give us an example of a winner. One of your big wins over the last 4 years.
Yeah. One of our companies actually uses LiDAR on satellites. It's a company called NewView. And so LiDAR is one of the technologies that self-driving cars use, for example, to navigate the road. It's how they see, quote unquote. Well, imagine using that on a satellite. This company is developing that technology that can then create high fidelity 3D imagery of any surface on Earth. So it has application with like energy and utilities, monitoring and maintenance, but also like agriculture. So monitoring, crops, as well as defense or, climate studies, climate technology. So it's a tremendous technology, and this company recently reported, so we can repeat it, well over $1 billion in signed contracts and data sharing agreements. And they actually have a celebrity investor. And so Leonardo DiCaprio is an investor there.
Wow.
So tying it all together. But they also have an undisclosed strategic investor. And then, of course, several financial investors that were involved. But it's a great story because we love it for the kind of obvious reason of like it's the first of its kind. It's really defining a category, has so many applications, but they're also has applications in sectors that we know, right? And so one of their bigger customers is actually a pipeline company that we're familiar with in the region, and that's a space that we know. So energy infrastructure, and but interestingly, they do one of the jobs that I had when I was in the Air Force in Kabul. This company can do much faster. And so my deployment would have been maybe 2 weeks instead of 6 months if that technology had been around. So it truly is a category defining technology. We were an early investor, so thrilled to be a part of that company.
You said high tech startups. That's high tech. This is cool stuff.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I get the URL right because the audience may be interested in checking out the first one you mentioned. NewView. It's spelled NUVIEW.space.
Yes, that's right.
NewView.space. Okay, very cool stuff. That's awesome. The second company, what's the name of that you mentioned?
All one company. So
okay.
The one that wasn't great, I didn't say the name of, but
right.
the company that NewView
it's all
has
NewView.
Application in two different sectors. So it has application in energy as well as ag and defense and climate. So maybe that's the takeaway is like one company that has so many markets that it can sell to. That's another thing. I mean, we love seeing kind of horizontal like platform technologies like that. It can be difficult to then have a go-to-market plan because you're trying to decide where you go to first. But that's maybe like a whole other conversation, like how investors think about that versus like just a companies that have one application. But yeah, NewView is a good example of one that's a horizontal platform.
Thanks for the clarification there. So NewView.space, NUVIEW. Good example there. With our audience, a lot of people do invest in the stock market, and we do teach that, hey, when a business is more mature, you like to, have a business that's serving multiple industries, has multiple streams of revenue. In case one gets pulled out from under it, it can still grow. But where you're at, I can totally see from your perspectives, you want to be highly focused and get really good at one, make a bunch of money in one, and then you can diversify. But you got a cool example here of a company that its application is so advanced it can solve problems in multiple verticals. Which is a great place to be.
Yeah. I think the difference is when asking yourself, like, when do you kind of go to a different customer profile, a different sector, it's really a function of like how much work it's going to take, right? If you're generating data, it's like in NewView's case, they're capturing the data regardless. And so then it's just a matter of selling to different customers. And so that's maybe a key attribute. Whereas if you're having to retool your product and kind of retrain customer support, well, now that's a very different question about when do you sell to a different sector.
Right on. Yep. Let's take a quick commercial break. Have you ever lost money in the stock markets? Maybe you saw something on YouTube, read something on Reddit, or maybe you heard something from a friend. Yeah, I think we've all been there. Most people lose money in the stock market because of emotions. What if you could remove emotions from investing? And what if there was an easy button for investing? Introducing TYKR, a platform that helps investors manage their own investments confidently. It's perfect for beginners and it will save advanced investors a lot of time. Check this out. Here's some of the key features. All right, we have stocks, ETFs, and crypto. We also have a watch list feature, which is my favorite feature. It's the set it and forget it feature. If something changes on your watch list, you get notified. That way you can sell a stock before you lose a lot of money. We also have a portfolio tracker and custom alerts on stocks, ETFs, and crypto. Now, I could talk about Ticker all day, but don't take my word for it. Go to Trustpilot and see what our customers have to say, or we have a 4.9 out of 5. And if you're interested, you can join Ticker for free. I got a few more fun business questions here. So one is, we're going to put your entrepreneurial hat on, not your investor hat. If you were to start a business and one of the key sectors you focus on, what would be one of your first steps?
Find a really smart person. No, seriously, if I were to do if I were to get back into the entrepreneurial world as a founder, I would look for like deep energy tech. I mean, that's personally an area that I'm really interested in. So coming from oil and gas background, that's been the last 150 years that's powered our country. But I'm really excited around the science of kind of what's next, and there's some really interesting developments in nuclear energy. But because of that, one of my first steps would be I need, to work with somebody who has deep domain expertise, because that's a very technical field. And so would really look for like a technical co-founder. Now, and I guess to do that, I mean, it's really a matter of working your network. And I'll give a specific example. When I co-founded Cortado Ventures with my partners, I looked back at the numbers the year leading up to the launch and kind of in the beginning of the launch. I had 500 meetings in that time. So that's 10 a week. Yeah, that's right. So 500 meetings in the year kind of leading up to and the beginning of the launch of Cortado. And those meetings were me just working the network, asking questions, like start with the dumbest questions, and then you're a little bit smarter, and then you also like uncover more things on that topic. Like I may be taking a call with somebody to learn about allocation strategy. And then in that conversation, something comes up about like secondary markets and how and how you get to liquidity. Well, then now I should have other 2 more conversations with people that they refer me to on that topic, and then that reveals new things. So to answer your question, like what would be my first step if I were to say like starting tomorrow I'm going to start a new company? It would be I'm going to plan to have like 500 meetings, 500 calls, Zoom meetings to meet with it, to really uncover like what is the opportunity and how do I start?
Yeah. I love that. I do know entrepreneurs, they've got an idea at the surface level and they start moving forward. They start investing money, and then they get down the road a few months and realize, oh gosh, I should have went this direction, not that direction. That could have all been avoided if they interviewed and talked to a whole bunch of businesses and really uncover the true problem so you can get laser focused on the right thing.
I think it's like an Einstein quote that says, if I had 20 days to solve a problem, I'd spend the first 19 days defining it.
Yes.
So that's an important aspect of discovery.
Yeah. Good call. All right. When still kind of in this position as a founder and you're on that side of the table, you're a VC. So what are the key actions you should take before reaching out to a VC? Because I know some of the listeners are like, oh, maybe I want to reach out to you, but there's a few things you need to do before. So what are those steps you would recommend?
Knowing what stage a company's at, and then what stage that VC invests in. And so, most VCs start off at like seed stage, which is where product is developed, you have a minimum viable product, and you have maybe some pilot customers or some early revenue. If somebody is earlier than that, if somebody is still like pre-product, then that's a better fit for angels typically. And a lot of times people start with like family and friend investors and angels, and starting off with like smaller checks. Because I think maybe a misstep that some make is, well, I'm going to wait until I find that one VC that's going to give me the big check and I'll be done. It's really more like be getting the small wins now, get the smaller checks from family and friends and then angels in the near term, so that way you can start building the thing and kind of illustrate the use case, and even get some pilot customers. That way it'll tee up a more productive, first of all, it'll increase the odds that you'll land a meeting with a VC, but then it'll make that much more productive because VCs are more like metrics driven, want to see some traction, want to see like have a customer they can talk to get feedback on, how interesting is this technology. So I think really kind of understanding where you are and kind of what stage you fit in the investment landscape is an important first step.
Yeah.
And some programs, like there's some cities have incubators and programs that will even like work with the founder, that are nonprofits that'll work with a founder to actually help define that too. So
I've seen mistakes out there with entrepreneurs that they'll send a pitch deck with their idea to a VC that only focuses on Series B and C and beyond. It's like, you did not do your homework on your audience. So you're going to get a hard no on that.
Yeah. Emails are free, and so it's tempting to send out a lot of them. But I mean, you'd rather spend the same amount of time like finding like the one or two or three like best fits than that amount of time like scraping 1,000 emails and blasting everybody.
Yeah. Yes. Be smart about it. The shotgun approach can, it shows you didn't do your homework if those emails arrive, and if a conversation were to arise at a later date, they may not show interest in you. You don't want to kill the relationship before even really started. Here's a fun one. Let's say a founder gets a meeting with you. Let's get them prepped for the conversation. What type of questions would impress you in that meeting?
Of the founder asking me?
Yeah, exactly. The founder asking you. Yep.
Well, it being clear that they like looked at the website, and so I have an understanding of like how we view the world. And we publish things on Medium, and we share our thought process. So but if they were to start off kind of asking, actually I had one recently that was like, what is your thesis behind like this subsector?
Okay.
So like, what is interesting about this sector, for you, Cortado, as an investor? And I found that interesting, kind of caught my attention. And because it also gets that like alignment, are we viewing this opportunity in the same way? Are we actually the right fit as an investor? Because like, are we going to be able to add value, or we're just kind of like, oh, I don't know, I just thought this is cool. And so any questions that help see if like we are going to be a good value add investor for them, it shows like an experience level and like a maturity level and like professionalism, but it actually even is like a little bit of a psychology of like, it balances.
Yes. I know where you're going with this.
Balances like the framework of like, who's driving this meeting,
Yes.
I'm like, we both need each other, not just like I need you, you need me. And so it actually it makes that founder, makes that company seem more appealing from almost just like a reverse psychology advantage. So
yes, I've heard those case studies of founders that they know what they're looking for, and just asking for money isn't enough. You want the right strategic alliance with people that has them, like you've got knowledge in the space in your specific sector. It's like, so you want to be checking all the boxes, so it's really a good fit. And they'll go in with like the thought, well, yeah, they're interviewing me, but I'm also interviewing them. So the high ground isn't, lopsided, like you said.
That's right.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. All right. I want to do a roll up here. Then I'm going to ask you, what is one more key takeaway? I always like to do a roll up to really summarize some hot points here. I'm going to hit the green flags and red flags, but this episode is just packed full of a ton of value. This is amazing. So audience, here we go. I'm going to list, I've got 5 green flags and 4 red flags. So right at the top here, green flag number 1, founder's background abilities. That's what you're looking for. Leadership qualities. Number 2, articulate your vision. Can you articulate your vision? Where's the company going to be in the next 5, 10 years, so on and so forth? That's 3. Creativity is number 4. So are you a creative problem solver? And then number 5 is grit and tenacity. And of course, asking questions about your background, giving real life experiences that can bode well in your favor. Switching gears here, red flags, lack of honesty, number 1. 2, I always have to highlight this, poor communication. Don't they say it's the number 1 reasons why marriages fail, and it's the number 1 reason why businesses fail, poor communication. Evading bad news is number 3. I see this way too much, even with younger CEOs at the public level. I'll tell my audience about this, is like, sure, you want to provide all good news in your quarterly reports, but that doesn't do everybody favors. It's right. You want to, okay, this is what's going on. This is the truth. We have some challenges to work through, but then what are we doing to mitigate the problem? So sharing the bad news is important. And number 4 would be a bloated org chart, especially in pre-revenue. I love that one. Good call out. All right. Before we get to the rapid fire round, what is one more key takeaway you can give our audience?
Um, I'd say for people that are wanting to start something, wanting to start a company, have an idea, there really is no substitute for just starting and iterating, right? As
Mhm.
opposed to kind of waiting for, well, I need to make sure I have all the people in place and I need to make sure I like fundraise first. Really, even if you're not a technical person, like building something that illustrates what's possible, right?
Mhm.
Wire, sometimes we call it a wireframe,
Yes.
but there is no substitute for just starting. And you're gonna find out like that you started, that you maybe you should, get some early feedback that you should develop this side of the
Mhm.
product more, or a different product, or a different, whole strategy around the market that you're gonna address.
Mhm.
But there really is, when it comes to the entrepreneurial mindset, there really is no substitute for just starting, as opposed to kind of waiting for the stars to align.
I I love it. And two key things I want to point out there. I have to really hammer on, which is you mentioned the prototype, and I'm in the software world. You can have pretty complex stuff. You're dealing with hardware and software. I'm strictly software. Go to Figma. You don't need to write code. You can have clickable prototypes and save yourself so much time. But it's enough to
Mm,
get in front of customers, get feedback. What do they like? What don't they like? What would they do better? You can have those conversations in no time. So that's number one. And two is I agree 100%. Like talking about doing something isn't doing something. You got to
mm,
move. You got to, I use the phrase all the time. It's now or never. Like this is happening.
mm,
And too many people sit on the sidelines talking about their idea, but never execute.
mm.
You don't want to sit there.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're starting with a business plan, then you're wrong. Start.
Thank you.
Mhm,
Like, let's get to work. Roll up the sleeves and
mhm,
get after it. Yeah. All right. Now let's transition to the rapid fire round. This is the part of the
mhm.
episode where we get to find out who Nathaniel really is. If you can, try to answer each question in about 15 seconds or less. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. What is your favorite podcast?
All in.
I've heard of it. All right. What is a recent book you read and would recommend?
Range by David Epstein.
Really? Okay. I have
Yeah,
not heard
it's a
of
good
this
one.
one. Okay. I'm
I got
writing it
it. I
down.
got it back here. It's back here somewhere. Mm.
Here we go. Third question. What is your favorite movie?
Interstellar.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
I think
Matthew McConaughey as an astronaut. Come on now.
yeah, right. All right. All right. All right. I love Christopher Nolan films. I have to say, Interstellar wasn't my favorite, but still very creative movie
Yeah,
for sure.
it's
Yeah.
it scratches my like sci-fi itch too. So it's cool.
Yes. Yes. Nice. All right. What is the worst advice you ever received?
Um, Probably like the whole like don't go to bed angry thing. Um, I mean, because you're not going to like solve the thing in that moment.
Hmm.
Sometimes it just needs to sit. Sometimes you're going to feel different about it the next day.
Okay. Okay. I
Go to
hear
bed
you.
angry, folks. Yeah,
If you're like me, then you're not going to sleep. You gotta at
yeah,
least write it down or get it off your brain.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Flip the equation. What is the
Mm.
best advice you ever received?
My grandfather's advice, which was always collect prepayment. And what that is in the oil and gas business, before you drill a well, you got to collect prepayment for from all the partners.
Um,
If you
uh,
don't do that, then basically they get a free loan, and if it doesn't go well, they don't pay. And
yeah.
he did it. So, but I extrapolate it to a broader life lesson, right?
Yes.
Like don't count your chickens before they hatch, kind of thing.
Yes. 100% agree. That's good advice.
Mhm.
All right. And last question here, the time machine question. If you could go back in time to give your younger self advice, what age would you visit and what would you say?
I would go probably to like my mid 20s, that's 25, and
Mhm.
try to convince my younger self that success does not have to be linear. It doesn't have to be like a straight up into the right path.
Mhm.
There, in fact, detours sometimes where more of the breakthroughs happen, and so be open to that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, that's wise. I like that. All right. And then where can the audience reach you?
Super easy to find on like LinkedIn, and also Cortado Ventures is our handle on all the social media platforms. Luckily, it was available. So Cortado Ventures is
Mhm.
easy to find, and then on our website, cortado.ventures. So definitely reach out whether you're an investor or an entrepreneur, or just want to get kind of feedback on what you're thinking of building. Then let the chat.
Awesome. Nathaniel, this was awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been great.
All right. We'll see you.
See you.